Well, okay. All right. So I hereby call the meeting of the Affordable Housing Committee. So first up, it's the first time ever we have guests here. So that's a very encouraging sign. So I would request whoever wants to have or has something to say, please step up. And
Any public comment?
any comments?
Are you here with a school class? Okay.
Similar. That's it.
Thank you
All
so
right,
much.
thank you.
you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Yeah. All right.
So I'm here today for the exact same reasons though both of them are, but also I chose this one because it was pretty much perfectly fit with my schedule since I don't have anything really much to do, and plus I needed some.
That's
I
why
needed
we're all
something to-
here too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I needed something to go to.
You need to give your name and address so we know to report that.
All right, sure. My name's Aklon Salimi. I'm not gonna say the address.
Yeah, that's
You know.
That's fine.
Yeah, and yeah, I hope you have a good time.
all right. We'll try to keep it entertaining.
Thank you for coming. And as I said, if you have any questions afterwards, there's a phone number and you can call and ask for Kim. Okay?
Awesome.
Thank you. I think we can get started with the meetings. The minutes from the September 5 meeting.
Do we have a copy of the minutes from September 5?
I have a copy.
You have a copy.
I have a copy of the minutes, but I guess they never made it to this.
So
I
we
would
may
pass
want
it,
to
so-
hold that until.
Okay, adjourn
Next-
until the
next
next
meeting.
meeting. So on the last meeting, we are off to agenda item number 4. In the last meeting, we had members from the Rocky Hill Housing Authority come and speak to us. Anybody over here have any comments, any questions related to that?
Want to
meeting?
do a brief synopsis on what happened? That would be. But also, if anybody was
Yeah, so we had Susan from the Housing Authority come here. She explained what they are doing. They are currently in the midst of a renovation project, and then what other steps they are taking to, you know, make the availability for those who need it. And then she gave us some pointers on the Affordable Housing Committee. So just as a background, Affordable Housing is a fairly new committee. Our very first meeting was in January of this year. So we are exploring a lot of different options to see how affordable housing would benefit the town of Rocky Hill. So it was a good discussion. She did give us some other references that we could use for raising some, applying for grants, raising some money. We can get any projects that might come up off the ground. So that's kind of like brief description of that meeting we had with Susan.
Yeah, so the housing authority basically has 70
70.
70 units in Rocky Hill, and all of them are reserved for senior and disabled housing, and they are rent restricted based on income, and there's a huge need for it. And they haven't had a ton of investment over time. It pays for itself. So whatever they charge in rent, which Susan's example is, there are some people who pay like $250 a month for their little townhome, and whatever money they get in,
Oh.
kept there to do renovations, and so they're long overdue for renovations. They're approved for a grant for $2 million, I think.
Correct.
And right now they're trying to figure out how to make that go the furthest. I think they have some things out to bid to actually renovate the places to make them ADA compliant, meaning larger doorways, easy entrance showers, things like that, so that it actually accommodates their residents. But the problem is that's only going to scratch the surface and only going to bring it up to what is currently like urgent. It doesn't expand it at all. So I think we talked at length about different options for how do we build more, how do we pay for that, where does that money come from, and unfortunately there's only limited funds to do that.
In talking to Susan, I did speak with her today. Susan Moores is the executive director of the Housing Authority, and she did come in to see me. They applied for additional handicap accessible parking, and
Mhm.
additional parking spaces on the site, so that's part of this project. They also have received a $55,000 grant
Yep.
for a study to find out if they have the room to expand on site.
Yeah.
So that's
Good.
it is.
Great.
All right, moving on to point number 5. Charles, you're up.
Okay, just as a bit of background from things that are unresolved that I was working on, the property on West Street that had formerly been part of the inventory of affordable housing for the town of Rocky Hill. We're still waiting for confirmation that it is no longer there. So that's an ongoing wait.
That's the VA houses.
Pardon me?
That's the houses for the VA. That's
No,
the
no,
white-
it's the apartments across from the tennis place.
Oh, okay.
Elm
Forest
Ridge
Park?
Common.
Elms Common.
Elms
Oh,
Common.
Elms Common. Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
the head of the division for the state for the affordable housing math said he'd get back to us. He still hasn't gotten back to us, and at this point in time, I don't think that they are, but it's not official. And as to additional new housing to be built at the veterans home or renovated, we're going to wait until the election's over to bother Carrie Zepp Woods about that. She still has been trying to get me to get up there and to discuss whatever the housing units will be with people from the veterans home. So we're still waiting there. And there are a few other odd items about what are the total number of actual housing units in Rocky Hill that I haven't resolved. But as to the tiny houses, in some algorithm brought to my website a discussion of tiny houses. Now, tiny houses are in the International Building Code, which Connecticut adopted in 2018. They're in their residential code, IRC. And there are several rules that you have to abide by to have a tiny house to meet legal requirements. And the most important one is they cannot exceed 400 square feet. So we got 3 young guys out there. These ceiling tiles are 2 feet each. So 2 into 20 is what? 10. Thank you. 20 by 20 is 400, okay? So if you did 10 ceiling tiles towards the exit sign and then 10 ceiling tiles towards me and looked at that area, that's 400 square feet. So under this particular option called tiny homes, you could not build a house bigger than that. You could build one smaller than that. So it's an interesting concept that is permitted throughout Connecticut, and we're going to confirm whether or not it's permitted in Rocky Hill. Now, there are a lot of reasons why you would want to do this. These little units could be added individually in someone's yard. Now, do you 3 guys live in houses or apartments? What was the second one? Okay, so for those in a house, and maybe even for those in an apartment, you're probably in what's called a residential district. And so for tiny houses, the zoning for the town of Rocky Hill would still apply. So if it was in a yard, you could have a single unit as long as it complied with the setback requirements in other parts of our zoning. But you could also have groups of them in a new development, and they would be great for infilling and so on. And the homeowner who may want to put one in their backyard, they could rent it out, which is a good thing because you're able to create a new housing unit and the rent would be modest. You could use them for guest accommodations, aging people, and so on. And theoretically, they would increase the property value. And so in order to increase the amount of affordable housing, and affordable being, in this case, smaller housing, generally a 400 square foot unit would only have 1 to 2 bedrooms. The Federal Housing Administration has expanded its access to mortgage financing for tiny houses. So I seek the input of the other members of this, what are we, a committee or a board? A committee. Is this something I would pursue more information about it? There's a lot of information on the internet about people who want to sell tiny houses, and the way they do it is they're more than likely to be prefabricated. And when they're prefabricated, they can use an industrial process and most likely non-union labor. Elon Musk of Tesla Homes, claims that they have a unit that they can deliver to a site, assemble within a few hours, have occupancy shortly thereafter, and the cost, and again, Elon Musk is a marketing guy, is anywhere from 10,000 to 50,000. Well, that's cheap. And one of the differences is we just had a report about the $2 million to make improvements to the 40-year-old Rocky Hill housing down by School Street. That's probably going to be what's called a project labor agreement, which is a word that means they're probably going to use union labor. And union labor might have a premium or be greater than manufacturing housing by many multiples. So part of the advantage of tiny houses is that they can be made and they can be shipped. And you can have tiny houses on wheels as part of the legislation. And additionally, for tiny houses, there is greater flexibility. Let's say there's a loft in that 400 square feet to sleep in. In a regular house, the building codes requires a full staircase. Well, the staircase might be 3 feet wide by code, and because of what's called rise and run, and the rise has been reduced in the codes, it may cost you 40 or 50 square feet just to have a staircase. So they permit ladders with certain conditions and so on. So it's an idea that nationally it's been recognized that one way to make more housing available at a lower cost is to utilize some modifications in the building code and to permit small units with restricted conditions and to use the ability to use the manufacturing process. So you could do an individual in someone's own yard, or a developer could come in and say, I want to take that 3-acre parcel and do something. If we think it's a good idea as a committee, there may need to be a zoning modification. For example, Kelson Row is being built where the old Ames headquarters were, and they've reduced the side yard requirements there in order to get greater density. We as a town must give greater density if there's affordable housing units. So there's a combination of those kinds of issues that maybe there has to be a zoning modification that would permit X number of units with a greater density rather than one unit for 20,000 square feet. So it's something to be pursued. It's a way of addressing the affordable housing unit issue if, for example, you only pay $50,000 for what's called turnkey. Turnkey means when you buy or rent something, all you do is show up at the door, you turn the key and walk in. It's complete. If you could have a turnkey unit at $50,000, Kelson Row, which might have a higher level of finish, those units are more likely to cost $250,000 for those apartment units. And you may be able to generate a much greater increase in affordable housing units that way than any other way. So what do you want to do? You want me to look further into it?
So one question is, do these tiny homes need to be deed restricted to be considered affordable housing?
I think under the law, yes, that they would
Or
have to
in
be.
case of
To
ownership?
be under the statute, it would be deed restricted for 40 years.
Okay. And in case
Well-
of an owner wanting to build a tiny home?
If you want like an 830G type affordable
yeah,
units, I
yeah.
mean, they don't have to be for that.
Right. I mean,
But we have two things here. Affordable housing, there's a definition in state law that talks about affordable housing. And then there's making a housing unit more affordable for someone to live in, which is two kind of different things.
Yeah.
And tiny houses or accessory apartments would certainly make me paying my mortgage a lot easier. So it would make it more affordable for me to buy a home. If I could have another unit on the property where I can get rent, garner rent from that unit, and that way, it's more easily affordable for me.
well,
to buy.
and technically, if you're receiving like Section 8, for instance, that's an affordable unit.
Correct.
You wouldn't have to deed restrict it for 40 years. You could have a deed restriction saying, that it's income based, whoever moves in type of thing. And that would still count as a capital of AH affordable housing when it comes to the state rule.
And the next question would be, I mean, this is like the CHFA finance construction of tiny homes.
I could find out. I don't know.
So that's something we can find
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
They often administer FHA and other type of government subsidies and restrictions. I don't know. I'll find out. And just again, the issue about affordable. Remember, in being tiny, number one, their utility demand is going to be less, and in being manufactured, probably with a pretty high standards of efficiency in terms of heating and cooling and so on. And there's less square foot. I mean, insurance. I think all of the issues of home ownership, maintenance, utilities, insurance, and how it gets paid. And in reading about them, I have this crazy idea in the back of my mind that, well, you could turn to Liberty Bank that just financed 236 units or whatever and say, we would like you to donate $50,000 to be one of the pioneers of our tiny homes development. And they have a vested interest. They take deposits here. They do construction financing. Maybe the Greater Hartford Foundation for Public Giving. You know, at $50,000 for a housing unit, it's not that hard to go out and beg and steal.
Well,
just as an
maybe not
idea.
steal.
Yeah, but it just, granted, they're going to be small, but people at the beginning of the life curve before you go up and have a family and so on, or at the end when your family is gone or you have no family, they're the ones who suffer greatly because of the affordability issue. I believe that the units down on School Street and so on, they're not much bigger than 400
No.
feet. They're 450 maybe. And I think the units that are being built off of Brook Street
Or
are
450.
they're about
I
450.
think 450 for a one bedroom, 650 for a two.
Yeah,
I
so
think.
I mean they're not
Yeah, it's not like wicked small.
Well, and at the end
It's
of the at the end
definitely
of the,
functional for one or
it's
two
larger
people.
than a tent.
Absolutely.
And if you've seen, I mean, I've gone online and looked at those too, Charlie. And if you see what you can put in there and how you utilize space, you'd be surprised how much space is actually wasted in a 1,600 square foot
Yeah.
home or not utilized properly. You really would be.
Yeah. Do you guys know what a transformer is? Okay, so there are people who build.
Well, which type of transformer?
The
Like
toys?
Optimus Prime or like, okay, they're thinking of different transformers.
Yeah. Well, the one that goes from you as a student studying to like a robot that beats
Okay.
everybody
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the right one. That's the right
Yes.
one. Okay.
There are very creative designers who are able to take a space and maybe the bed pulls down and it's used as a bed, but then when you fold it in a different way, it's your dining table, and then it has story. There are a lot of really creative elements of housing that permits you to have less than the 400 square feet. So it's something that I think we ought to at least
No,
look
of course,
at.
I agree.
So for people that live or have seen like apartments in New York City, they're little studios. That's what we're talking about. So fitting everything into a little room, if you will, is not really the issue here. It's like finding the space to build it. So I mean, it's doable. It's like you said, the flip top beds are all different things. Small appliances, that's all doable. So the harder part is just finding the location, in my opinion.
And so, what the thought is around tiny home communities is that you have a bunch of these together, and then you have one shared space, outdoor space, clubhouse type thing. So, your tiny home is just those bare essentials, but you're not stuck in there all the time because you also have shared space. So, for instance, I mean, it's a different type of example, but there's a tiny home community that was built in New Haven to house homeless people on church grounds. There's a whole controversy behind that, but they are able to do that as a place for people to sleep and have their own small kitchen and bathroom to their own place, and yet you still have the church and the other facilities around there, so it's not like you're in 400 square feet by yourself in the winter and things like that. Now, if it's an ADU situation where it's just the accessory dwelling unit, then you may, if it's not rented out separately, you have the whole rest of the house too. To share space. And in Rocky Hill, you've got outdoor green space you share. It may seem small when you're thinking of it as 10 by 10 tiles, but that's just where you sleep and eat and go to the bathroom.
I mean,
The
400
ones in the
square
Hill, I
feet.
think, were much smaller.
The New Haven ones are it's a little different.
But 400 square feet, it's you can make a functional living
Yeah.
space out
Yeah.
of that. Definitely, I don't think that is
I don't think that's
a
the
big
issue.
problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not the issue.
So, like, my point related to these from the beginning is just like, I think it would be helpful as a town to have a step-by-step guide if you want to put one of these on your property, or an in-law suite, or some other type of accessory dwelling unit, like a booklet that says, I want to put another unit on my property. How does that work?
Right.
And
And I
it-
think one other thing is about getting a separate meter for electricity or
yeah,
gas.
that's another aspect of that. And sure, if somebody wants to put one of those on their property, they could always call Kim, and she could help with that process. But it's also just
Or
really
Kim could write the little booklet.
exactly, and then she doesn't have to answer all those questions, laid out in stone. And then if there's anything missing, like separate meters, how does that work? How do you get approved for what if there is an issue with a setback? And for everybody in the audience, setback is basically just the distance between properties, the distance between buildings, stuff like that. Then we can address it. So you have the booklet and you go, oh, there's some holes here. So it's not really that easy to have this, because I'll say it again, there's plenty of people that are like, oh, it would be a great idea for me to be able to put a little thing on my property. We have some farms in town, but they go, I don't really know what the zoning rules are about it. And, I on the town's website, it doesn't really say what I can do. And, am I going to have to go and like stand up at the podium and make a case for it? And
No, I think that's a good idea. We need to have a simplified procedure list / information about how to go about it. Makes
what you
makes
can
it a lot
do
easier.
what you can do, first steps, resources, what you can't do.
And that would be through community development services, seeing that we have the planning and zoning in one space along with the building department, the building code. So that's where we have.
All right. All in favor? No, I'm just kidding.
All right, so moving on, item number 5B, timing of the Affordable Housing Forum. So we kind of want to hold a forum where reps from CHFA would come and
Connecticut
Educate-
Housing Finance Authority.
Connecticut, that's a full form, yeah. And educate people about how they can avail, loans at cheaper rate than what you get in the private market. So that's one of the areas where we are looking at where, people can have some immediate benefit, where they can go out, if you like the place. How can you get financing for paying like a cheaper rate versus what you're gonna get in the private market? So I think the item on the agenda is to come up with a date and
Or at least a time frame.
for the time frame.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to Rita in Parks and Rec, and she's the person that's in charge of scheduling for the community center.
Okay.
And I would think we would use room 1, which is the biggest room there. I mean, we were talking out in January.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
between-
well, things happen.
Yeah. So.
Things come up.
So.
That's probably the right time frame at this point.
Well, because you're the real estate person here, and people.
Get people ready for the spring market.
That's what I was thinking.
January 1st, people start making resolutions.
So
Time to buy a house. Snow's melting.
So is that a cool time frame?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a good
I'm
time frame. 'Cause
thinking,
it's before the spring market. It's after the holidays. Everybody's settled down. It gives us enough time to make sure we can schedule CHFA, whoever else we want
because
to
we
be here.
have bad dates in January.
Okay.
We don't talk about good dates. They only talk about bad dates now.
Yeah.
So the 8th, 9th, 15th, 22nd, and 28th are no good. So those are the dates that are no good. It would obviously
8,
be in
9, 15, 22nd,
22nd
I
and
have no idea.
28th.
2nd and
I
28th.
didn't.
Which month is this?
January.
Can you repeat those dates again?
What is bad is Wednesday the 8th, Thursday the 9th, Wednesday the 22nd, and Tuesday the 28th.
I think it should be. I mean, really, it's more around when can we get CHFA or any other relevant folks here.
Yeah, it would be nice to have.
They're the ones that are going to add the most value to anybody visiting.
I mean, it would be great to have CHFA, Department of Housing. It'd be great if there's in state, if there was anybody with respect to tiny homes,
Hmm.
anything to do with that.
And we're looking at after work hours, right?
It would be in the evening.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely after work hours because
It would, like maybe 7 o'clock or something. And we could have refreshments.
7 p.m.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say like, the third week, which is the week of January 13th to 17th, my opinion would be ideal because after the holidays, give everybody like a couple of weeks to settle down and get over the
Not the 15th. That's planning and zoning.
right. But maybe like, I don't know, 16th or the 17th,
Probably not a Friday either.
not a Friday either. Yeah, right.
So I'm thinking either Monday, Tuesday, or
Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Thursday.
Still, we can pick
Well,
one of
my
the 3
January's
days
not booked up yet, so
okay.
if that works.
Matter of
I mean, obviously, it needs to work with the reps from CHFA and a bunch of other people.
I mean,
Well,
realistically,
it's far enough out. So
yeah.
we should be able to
Um,
get.
I mean, we can get. I know we could get lenders and realtors and stuff like that here as sponsors and stuff like that too. It's just a question of do we want to do that as well? Because the lenders are often the ones that are administering CHFA. And some lenders have other neighborhood programs, like Liberty Bank has special programs and stuff like that too.
I mean, we can reach out to local. I'm talking Rocky Hill local, because we don't want to end up being. This is more of an educational type thing,
Yeah.
and things local, because we don't want to ended up having it like we want to go advertise for this agency or that agency.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know. We didn't.
Yeah, we don't want to do
play.
that.
We don't want to play favorites, and also we're not here. It's yeah. It's educational, but I know those are people that would come.
So, yeah, I think January would be a good time.
And I think
And
we
I
really
agree. Like,
need-
I don't think we want to make it like a sales /
Yeah,
marketing
no.
event for when we go out and look for sponsorships. Or at least
I'm just saying if we want funding for refreshments or
I bet we can get that. That can be done without
Okay.
sponsorships.
Good.
So, Kim, you're gonna
So I'm thinking I can try to reserve, I mean, these 3 dates at least tentatively now, and then maybe reach out to the individuals that came from CHFA just as a start to see.
They have a whole program
Yes, they do.
for buyers. They could do a whole 2 hours just on their own.
I know they could.
Yeah.
I know they could, but I think we want to kind of tap into others as, if we can.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe DOH and maybe there is somebody, with respect to the tiny homes or construction.
Yeah.
whatever.
Yep.
And we can do that as well.
And that'll be good for January too, because one of the most popular first-time homebuyer programs through CHFA already ran out of money for the year, and they did a little stopgap for anybody that had already reserved. That's the time to own program that they talked about. That already ran out of money for 2024, but it'll be refilled by January. So that program will be back up and running by then. It gives them also, they're going to be able to promote it as well.
Right, moving on. 5C, Rebecca, not here today. 5D, Jen.
No.
So what I've been doing is putting out a lot of feelers, trying to talk to different towns.
Could you just speak into the mic because
Oh.
we're recording? Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
Used to that. What I've been doing is reaching out to different towns or associations like CHFA, just trying to get information about how they have been able to or how they could get funding and proceed with building affordable housing. I've learned a lot from other towns and how they've done grassroots effort to pull things together that would help the community and not just build a housing area, but to have resources around it. And Montville was one of the towns that I talked to, and I brought that information to the Affordable Housing Committee. We discussed that. I did talk to CHFA as well. And whenever you talk about affordable housing, everyone I've talked to is just really passionate and really excited about it. So I have learned that there are, and it is overwhelming if you start looking online at state opportunities to get funding. There's a lot out there. It's not one size fits all. I think we can find money in several different areas, but you have to do your homework first to identify what you're looking for. And I shared some of that with the group already. I mean, if you look online, you see a lot of stuff, but you need to have like your ducks in a row and know what you want to build. So one thing for our town is that we are a town. We're not a city. And so in order to capitalize on some of the money from all these various sources, it's helpful to have like a blighted area or an area where something is historic, and it's easier to get money using those type of situations. So as far as like an actual tool, I don't have a tool. I've been canvassing different departments and towns, learning about, where they've been going to get money. And the thing I was going to bring to the tonight is one of the things I learned about that was happening with Barkhamsted. There's a housing trust that was formed there, and State Rep John Larson has been very instrumental in that. And just things like that. I read stuff like this and I make a note, and I didn't do it prior to this meeting, but I will be doing it, following up with the town to see what they had done. So to sum up, there's not like a tool necessarily. It's just like everyone making phone calls, reading the newspaper, watching the news, and just grabbing any little morsel of information you can get as far as how people are getting money. That's very high level view. There's a lot of information out there, but it's overwhelming.
Yeah, in the information on the table, there's a website that you can go to, Partnership for Strong Communities.
Yep.
And it actually, the print, it doesn't print out well, but it's actually a chart, and it's a interactive page where you can search for programs, program status, the type of funds, whether it be a grant, a loan, federal funds, rebates, tax credits, and then which agency are we talking about? Are we talking about a DOH, the Department of Housing, Department of Economic and Community Development, HUD, Housing and Urban Development at the Fed level. And are you a developer? Are you a housing authority? So you plug in all these different pieces of the pie and it spits out what's applicable to you. And then you have to go through and kind of drill down into each level of the website to see if it truly is applicable to you. But I tried printing it out and it doesn't really do it justice. But if you go to the website's on the top of the page, pschousing.org, and then you can play with the chart.
Looks great. Thank you for sharing.
So yeah, this is, I mean, it's really difficult to read this, but it does have a lot of different programs listed here. I just kind of did a print what was on the screen, but there's a lot of stuff out there depending on what you are. And I know a lot of municipalities tend to, instead of doing it themselves, they partner with the developer, and it's the developer that does that.
There's a lot here. Can we add that to an agenda meeting? Add it to an agenda item for maybe our next meeting to give us time to actually take a look at some of these links.
So that leads us to next topic. The state-owned land, the former I-291 right of way. I know Tom's not here because he's been running point on this, but I think one question that we discussed at the last meeting was, as a committee, do we want to take a vote that do we want to pursue this as an opportunity where we could potentially build affordable housing?
Well, and once again, it would be, because this is an advisory group, a working group, that's something that if you decide to go that way, that would be brought to the town council. And ultimately, it would be up to them whether or not they
Right.
wish to.
So when I say vote, like, are we collectively in favor of pursuing this and then, presenting it
Or
to
at
the
least
town
looking
council?
into it to
Yeah.
see what,
Right.
yeah.
I actually drove by that area, so I wasn't that familiar with it. And there is a lot of land. There's definitely space to do stuff with. I don't have any background on zoning or lot sizes, but there is definitely a chunk of land there.
Yeah, that was the former I-291, basically
Yeah.
an on-ramp, off-ramp. The state will be retaining part of that property. They did do a subdivision or a lot split, so they are retaining part of the property for themselves, should they need storage for construction materials, what have you. So they're retaining part of the property.
So are we ready to decide, or do we want to put this as an item for next meeting where
What
should we,
So what exactly are we voting?
so that plot of land, we had a call with Kerry Woods on that. The plot is currently owned by DOT.
Yeah.
The town would have to purchase that land at market price from DOT. But once it's purchased
For how
by-
much?
She said it's about 250,000, but that number could change.
And how big is it?
4 or 5 acres. 4 to 5 acres. It depends. And then, if the town council decides that that is a good opportunity and they're willing to front the cash to purchase that property, then
Don't we have a committee for green, or fund? Didn't we approve some money set aside to purchase green space? Or farmland preservation committee? Don't we have something like
But
that?
we have the land acquisition and
Land
farmland
acquisition, yeah.
preservation,
There
but
was a bond for land acquisition. I don't know what the
but keep
status
in
of-
mind that I know what has happened with a lot of that funding was for farmland development right purchases
Right.
over time.
But I'm just saying, isn't that a committee? Or isn't there a group that specifically looks at opportunities to buy available land?
I it may come under their jurisdiction. I know they concentrate on farming.
Yeah, they would be looking to buy it and then not develop it, right?
I wasn't here the last
Yeah.
meeting, so I don't know what discussion there was. Um, so I have initial basic questions. We're talking about the town buying a piece of the highway that the state of Connecticut assembled, or they took existing private land, Kim? Is that what it was initially?
Yeah, this goes way back to Barbara Cirillo days.
Yeah, okay,
Yep,
so
yep.
this is where people play real Monopoly. And that there are streets, I don't know what neighborhoods you're from, that may end in a dead end, which there is additional land that's presently owned by the state of Connecticut Department of
Transportation.
Transportation, and they may have acquired it through federal money, and there may be existing legislation that says, upon your disposal, the first right of refusal goes to the town of Rocky Hill. And it might have a clause in there that says if you're going to use it for affordable housing, based upon a later legislation done by the federal government, you could get it for nothing. We don't know. But one of the questions is it level? Does it connect to existing streets? Are there utilities nearby? Kim, do we know any of this?
We haven't done that analysis.
Yeah. So I'd say before a vote took place, we should know what we
And
don't
we
know
can
at this
get that
time.
to you for next meeting,
Yeah, and maybe we have an informal.
because the construction costs will be considerable.
Yeah, because there had been improvements. It was paved for a ramp at one time, and I don't know
All
if that's the
over
part
now.
they're going to retain.
No, what along Maple would be what would be sold if they're going to sell it.
Yeah, between Gilbert and Maple, as I recall.
Yeah.
But there are a few cul-de-sacs in and out. So it may be level. We don't know the soil condition. It may be such that it's wetland soil. It may look dry, but whether or not it complies with Rocky Hill inland wetland standards, I just think we need to do a little more, which might be a couple of simple maps. The state of Connecticut CT Ecos has maybe 20 or 25 maps that are appropriate, and they have everything from LIDAR to wetlands and so on, just to understand the property. Is it worth spending the effort to do it and making the recommendation? So, how do we do that? Do we, as a committee, do that, or do we delegate that to Kim's assistant, or?
We can bring that to the next meeting.
Yep. It's something we can keep. Yeah, I'd be in support of that. Just keep looking at it and making a little progress before the next meeting as well, because Rocky Hill already owns a lot of land. So do we need to go and buy another 4 or 5 acres that might not be developable when we already have something that has access to water and sewer and electricity and everything,
All right.
Yeah,
So
I'm not against it.
Yeah.
I don't think we know what we know.
Yeah.
We don't know what we don't.
all right, so we're gonna bring this back to the next
Yeah, we'll
meeting.
keep it. I would support keeping that as an agenda item to revisit.
Right. Discussion, suggestion, ordinance on tax abatement for first-time home buyers.
Yeah, no, that's effective a couple of days ago.
Right.
And there's something on the table this evening. It does go into some detail as far as they did like a fiscal study as far as what this would potentially cause as far as revenue loss to communities. I don't know off the top of my head the number of CHFA first-time homebuyer loans in the town of Rocky Hill.
Well, it fluctuates
Yeah,
constantly.
yeah.
It's on the report.
Yes,
But
yeah,
I
but
don't
I,
remember what it
I
was.
don't happen to know what that is, but
Might actually
but
be
it
on their
does-
website.
yeah, but it does, I don't see it as a big fiscal impact in Rocky Hill.
FISCAL.
Fiscal. Is that- yeah. To the town. But this just took effect, so that went over to the town manager as it sits on the table this evening, and a follow-up memo will go to him and the town council for consideration.
I don't know. Alan's going to know this better than anybody in the room. Are there entry-level houses for sale in Rocky Hill that meet the HFA guidelines?
Every house in Rocky Hill just about meets CHFA guidelines. Up
For
to,
first-time
yep,
buyers?
up to, well, CHFA follows the federal guidelines for the price of the home that they're willing to do. I'm not sure what it is right now, but the last I checked, it skyrocketed in the last few years. It used to be $450,000. Now I think it's 800,000 or something like that. They'll finance anything up to that amount. So yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of them. CHFA is more, the CHFA guidelines are about the purchase price of the home. So you can't buy a McMansion $1 million estate with a subsidized loan, but it's more about the buyer themselves. So Elon Musk can't use CHFA to buy a house. And a lot of people underneath him probably can't either. You may not be able to use CHFA to buy a house. Yeah, exactly. You've already owned houses. Generally speaking, the guidelines is you have to live in Connecticut for 2 years. And you can't have bought or had a house in your name for the last 2 years or so. And you can't make over a certain income level.
Yeah, that's where I mean.
That income level is about $150,000, maybe something like that. There's guidelines for it, and you can Google it and find them. I don't remember exactly what they are right now, but they're not exorbitantly high, and there's a lot of other great programs too. If you have over $15,000 in student loan debt, you can get 1.25 percentage points off of a loan. So right now, the going rate for a 30-year loan and conventional is 6.2%. But if you have $15,000 in student loan debt, you can get 4.8. That's a big difference.
No, that's not well known.
Yeah, it's new. It's called a smart something.
But that's not well. That's not a.
And that's the reason
not
that we.
well known.
Yeah.
So these
Yeah.
types of things should be.
And the funding is fluid. on
Yeah.
that.
Yes, and funding is fluid. There's candidates out there nationally right now talking about a $25,000 grant for first-time home buyers in the state of Connecticut. We already have that from CHFA when the funding's available, which it isn't always.
So the lesson is when government's involved, it's complicated. So you
gotta
always have
research
to
it.
ask a question because the rules change daily.
Yes.
And don't try to make any sense out of it. It's just like whoever set up Monopoly, you'll never understand. You just go by the rules.
Cool.
It's true. It is true.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Number 6. We already spoke about the accessory dwelling unit. Charles kind of covered it
Yep.
as part of his agenda item. P&Z Commission activity, Plan Implementation Committee appointment, and the 2025 Plan of Conservation and Development.
Um,
Kim, it's
The plan implementation committee, we have, planning and zoning has, in their plan of conservation and development, the ability to appoint people to what's called plan implementation committee. It is to just that, implement the plan of conservation and development. We are currently going out to bid for our 2025 plan of conservation and development. And we're in that process now, which I'll get to. But down the road, once we get into that process, there will be the ability for this body, as well as others in town, whether they be committee, boards, commissions, whatever, advisory, statutory, they're all going to have input on this document. It's a town-wide document. The public is a big part of it as well. And what we'd like to see, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself as well as the commission, we would like to see a representative of this body. And, you know, think about it down the road. Obviously, it doesn't have to happen now, but we'd like to see a representative of the Affordable Housing Committee sit on that plan implementation committee. You'll be talking more about many different subjects, not just affordable housing, not just about housing. You'd be talking about open space conservation. You'd be talking about economic development. You'd be talking about sustainability, community resiliency, drainage. You'd be talking about a whole slew of topics. But we're trying to get a well-rounded committee together, and that too is a working group. They've been meeting bi-monthly, but that will be something that will come up probably in the spring of next year. So
Something to put on the radar then?
yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So be thinking about that. We'll be sending out probably a memo with some ideas for this body to talk about as far as what's important to this group and what your charge is with respect to on a town-wide basis. We put together an RFP for the plan of conservation and development, which must be completed on it before the end of June of next year. So planning and zoning will be busy. It is an update of a plan. It is not a brand new plan, but it is an update of a plan. We already have 5 companies that have received copies of the RFP, more than likely be responding, which I think is very good. I put together a list of companies that I would like to see get the document, and out of the 5, 3 of my 5 have already picked it up, so that's pretty good. So I'm looking forward to this process, and I hope it's an innovative one, a creative
Well, I just hope that this committee has a seat at the table for the POCD.
one. Well, you're going to be. I mean, it's the Planning and Zoning Commission's baby, but as I said, we're going to want to have input from all the boards and commissions, as well as, I mean, your residents and business people in town as well, students. We want input from everyone. So,
So I think we already discussed the agenda items for the next meeting.
next meeting, I'm aware of the former I-291 right-of-way property. We'll be getting some maps together and some information on the property itself. We'll be talking about partnership for strong communities, and I'll be sending by email links to that matrix, so you can take a look at that also, because it's a lot of information on that on that website. There's a lot of information there. Anything else? We can maybe get some ideas for the housing forum. Also, kind
Housing forum.
of as we go along in our meetings, we can kind of
Right. So
tie that
hopefully we'll
down.
have some information about the participation, who's coming and
Yes.
what they plan to present, and then maybe we
Yep.
can.
What's the date of the next meeting?
It's the
November.
first. Thursday of the month.
So right after,
Let's
Alright.
see.
Is it November 7th? Oh, yeah.
I might
11/7.
have trouble being present for that one.
Then we have the tiny home
Yep.
I'll talk to
for
I'll
the
put that on there
yeah.
too.
I think that's good for me. We can have more focused discussions on less agenda items.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other?
At the next meeting, I will also put on the agenda by state statute, we must file our meeting agenda for the next year with the town clerk. So by the end of January, actually, but I do it early. So if this date is good for people, first Thursday of the month,
Yes.
I would,
Yeah.
I
That
would
works for
keep
me.
that. Do you want to continue on a monthly basis?
We should continue on monthly
Okay.
basis, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
on board.
Okay.
The only thing we gotta look at, July 4th doesn't fall on a
Yeah, we'll do
the
the
Thursday.
Yep.
But otherwise, I think we should be
Yeah.
okay.
I think we had a couple questions. If you've held on to that question at all, before we adjourn, if you want to step up to the mic so that we can hear you. What's that? Yeah, what?
I just had a question about the the idea to was it reduce or just get rid of taxes for people who were buying houses for the first time?
Mm-hmm.
Is that like a suggestion, something that's being implemented like currently, or
what
Yeah.
we
I was getting water. then.
okay. So
Oh, yeah.
what's going on?
I know you're worried about the taxes for your own house, probably,
6
right?
years.
Yeah.
What it is the state legislature at the state level have put together legislation about, it's called an act concerning property tax abatement for certain first-time home buyers. So what they're saying is to towns, basically, the towns
here's a
can
copy of it.
create. You have a copy?
Yeah, that's a
Okay.
copy of the bill.
Towns can create basically an ordinance in the town council. So the legislative body, the people that make the laws in those towns, what they can do is they can kind of reduce the taxes for up to $500, not more than $500, for not longer than 5 years. So $500 each year for 5 years if they purchase funds through using CHFA, Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, money, and they're first-time home buyers. So if you're all grown up and this program's still in effect, you want to buy your first home in Rocky Hill, and you get money through CHFA.
And Rocky Hill has
Rocky
enacted
Hill-
this.
And Rocky Hill has an ordinance, a town law that says we can do this. You might get a tax break up to
Yeah.
$500.
So just from a broader reason for property tax purposes, the town can't just say everybody who's left-handed gets some money off of their property tax. You know, they can't just willy-nilly pick those things. So the state has to say who can have exemptions for property tax situations. So in Rocky Hill, we have a few different versions. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we have things for some of the volunteers in town, volunteer firefighters, volunteer ambulance, things like that can get a property tax abatement. I think there's also one for seniors.
Yep.
Can apply to get these. And we've enacted these, understanding that will make staying in Rocky Hill and volunteering for these things that we need to be more affordable. So what it would look like is somebody's looking to buy a house and they're a first-time home buyer and they're going to be using one of these programs. They would look at, well, I'd like to live in Rocky Hill or Cromwell or Newington or Wethersfield, somewhere in here, but Rocky Hill is giving me a little bit extra in property tax abatement for my home, so maybe I'll buy there. Or they're going to be buying here in Rocky Hill anyway, and they decide to use one of these programs because it means they can save a little bit on their property tax. And the reason that we would want them to do this is because we want to increase the percentage of housing in Rocky Hill that falls under the affordable housing by state statute. So we're tracked with that percentage. And there's a goal of 10%, and Rocky Hill is less than 5% of affordable housing. So if we can encourage more people to use this program instead of another one, maybe that number will tick upwards. And then in the state size, we'll be providing enough affordable housing. But not just that, like not just state rules, it's also just good to be providing more affordable options for people, to live in town. So that's the long answer, and you guys have already been here longer than you probably expected. But.
All right, so sorry. This is a weird suggestion. So I was just thinking about this during the tiny house conversations that we were having. Couldn't you just theoretically stack the houses on top of each other? Just theoretically, if you were to think about it.
Do you ever see like the movie Ready Player One?
No.
Okay, well they do that in there. That's you say weird idea, but
But what
Not
did
a
you say?
weird idea.
stacking the tiny houses on top of each other.
Well, you could, sure.
They have actually taken, the shipping containers
Yeah.
or the back end of trailers, they've actually taken them and turned those into,
I stayed in
Shipping
one in
containers.
Montana.
Yes,
I stayed in a
yes,
shipping
yes.
container house. It was
Yes.
awesome.
they're wonderful.
One of the issues of
Mhm.
stacking, which is vertically placing the housing
Mhm.
unit, then you need to have a means of escape or exit or egress. And the codes for that are pretty demanding. You don't want to have a staircase made of wood because it might
Burnable.
burn. And you need a certain width, and then there has to be lighting and so on. It's an element of expense that makes housing very expensive. And in fact, a lot of housing requires a second means of egress outward. So when you're building an apartment building or a vertical grouping of housing units, up until recently, the United States had building codes that required two means of egress. And so that added a lot of cost. In the tiny homes, what they have is that they can have upper level windows or windows in the roof, which then qualify as the second means of egress.
Like on your
So the tiny home sort of anticipates that. And we live here in New England where there's a sense of individual buildings as housing. Granted, Rocky Hill has a great number of what's called common wall or multi-level housing, but not everybody prefers that. Off of Brook Street, near, I don't know what that's near, they're building what
The
you're
funeral home.
talking about.
Beautiful.
Yes, 450 square foot units, generally one bedroom, most of them, and they will be stacked. And I think the earlier proposal next to the liquor store on Main Street was there was no elevator. Is that correct? They had an outside staircase covered with a kind of a goofy net. So you're on the right point. It's just a trade-off of all these different issues. If the zoning would permit you to do that, there's a lot of issues that have to be worked out. This is a proposal at its early stage. One group of people's belief that, well, if we let them build these little houses, there'll be less expense because they're fewer parts, they're smaller, etc. So it's complicated.
Yeah, and that would make a lot of sense since it's not easy to always stack places on top of each other because then you have to consider support like you said, emergency exits. There's a lot of things you have to consider as well.
But it's a good idea. Though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like where your head's at.
Maybe you'll be on the committee one day.
If I'm lucky.
Keep that in mind. Keep that in mind.
Thank you.
What grades are you?
Yeah.
If you don't mind. 8.
Great.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
Thank
We
you.
we could sit up here and talk for hours. It's great to actually have somebody
I
to do
said
that
it's the
too.
first time we have somebody come see us. So
I am very inspired by your thoughtful questions, insightful questions.
And we appreciate the curriculum for having you take these courses. I think it's a great idea for students to get involved. Okay.
All right, we've got
we have
like
plenty other meetings.
2
we
or
have
3
planning
more
and zoning
meetings to-
meetings coming
before
up.
then.
No.
And the next time we
Schwab
ask that
is-
you must bring Mr. Watson with you when you come.
Yes.
yeah. But thank you for coming.
Thank you.
With that motion to adjourn.
Before we,
Oh no, Tanvi? Yeah.
before we adjourn, I was thinking we go through like a lot of papers and like stuff. So do we want to like make a website or something with just a compilation of like all of our plans, all of like what we're trying to do?
Well,
Public
on the excuse me, we're still recording the meeting, so it's okay. It's okay. We admire your enthusiasm. We do have on the town website. We are obligated to post the agendas. We didn't post this packet because we're so short-staffed, but typically everything we give the commission will end up on that website.
Yeah, so if you go to Rocky Hill, the main website, and then you go to like agendas and meetings and go down to
Yeah.
Rocky Hill Affordable Housing Committee, and then it has agendas, meetings, meeting packets.
Okay.
We can upload them to
Yes.
meeting packets.
Okay.
Typically, the priority is like town council,
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can.
planning and zoning.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Planning and zoning. And then somewhere down the line there is affordable housing to make sure, all those in there. But yes, we can make it. They're all housed in there.
Okay.
And you can actually enter your email address if you want to receive, not just for this body. I mean, we tend to have an admin that would send things out to you. But if you're interested in the town council or some of the other committees in town, we hope you are. You can put in your email address and check off which ones you want to receive.
I
and
love that.
You'll get an
feature.
email when the things
that's awesome.
come out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because
use it.
I know I do that to make
Use
sure
it,
I
yeah.
don't have to go to another meeting. So, so I do.
I just get the alerts when they're either happening or being canceled or being moved.
Any other item?
All set.
Awesome.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you.